All right, and we are live. So, hi everybody, it's Rochelle from Adventures Around Asia and Teach Abroad Squad, and we have Rachel. Rachel, do you want to introduce yourself really fast?
Hi. Yes. So my name is Rachel and I write for Rachel Meets China. I have a travel blog about living in China. I have been in China for the past 4.5 years and I currently live in Beijing where I've been for about 2 years now. So living in China. Yeah.
Yeah, and I lived in China for 5 years, but I'm not in China right now. I recently left my job in China to work for myself online to help people teach in China. So
Yes.
I was like,
Yes.
I need to get Rachel on the phone to figure out what exactly is going on in China because I'm getting so many questions and I'm hoping that you have the answers.
I will do my best.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about what it was like to stay in China during this whole time?
Yeah, so I've been in China this whole time throughout the coronavirus happening. I was in here for Spring Festival and I was planning to travel around China. So I wasn't even going to leave China at all. I was actually in Chongqing at the very beginning of Spring Festival once things started getting a little bit crazy. And then it started spreading more. I started hearing more reports about some cities and close to Wuhan getting shut down. And at that point, I was going to travel some more, but I was like, I may not want to be out traveling. I think it'd be safer at this point to return home to Beijing where I live and just kind of hunker down there, see what's going to happen in the future. So I cut my travel plans short and I decided to come back to Beijing and I've been here the rest of the time. And it's been interesting to see how the process has gone in China because I came back before quarantine rules started taking into place. But right away, our job told us they were like, you're not going to come back to the office right away. You know, Spring Festival was going to be like, I think we had like 7 to 10 days off. But right away they said like, hey, we're going to take 2 extra weeks and work from home. So that was one immediate change. Secondly, I started hearing about my friends and other people around China. They started having more rules come into place about like shutting down certain cities, like quarantine rules if you were traveling around. A lot of people started wearing masks and taking temperatures whenever you were trying to go outside. It was kind of strange though at first, you know, we were hearing all of this in Wuhan and just kind of watching and waiting to see what would happen. And slowly we heard numbers were spreading, going to other cities. And then finally Beijing started getting more numbers. So it was kind of interesting to watch that slowly happen. Yeah, it's been a bit of a wild ride. I
So
guess,
what
yeah.
exactly were the rules in Beijing? Like, did they have, because I've been seeing, like, I run a free Facebook group, trying to teach abroad community
Mhm.
for people who teach abroad. So they a lot of people have been posting in there about like, oh, you're not allowed to go outside unless you're wearing a mask, or you're only allowed to go to the grocery store like once a week, or something like that. So what kind of rules did they have in place, at least in Beijing, that you at least could observe?
Mm. So it's been interesting actually. I feel like the rules differ depending on, you know, where you live and if you're a student or if you're a foreigner. Because for me personally, I live in a hutong, I live in a neighborhood. So it was harder for them at first to enforce like coming and going. I didn't have to do like a strict 2 week quarantine, but I do like have a pass to get into my neighborhood. And so I had to register with my hutong neighborhood. They had to take my name, my travel plans when I returned to Beijing, and make sure that I wasn't traveling outside of Beijing, and that I had been living in Beijing for at least 14 days once they like started the rules. So I had to register and all of that, and I have a card to enter and leave, and they take my temperature every time I enter and leave my Hutong neighborhood. So that was just for me personally, and nobody told us strictly like you have to wear a mask every time you go out, but it's required to wear a mask most restaurants and businesses now. When a lot of things started shutting down, and a lot of things are still shut down even
Mm-hmm.
now, they started telling us if you want to go to the grocery store or if you want to go to a restaurant or a cafe, any place, you need to wear a mask to come inside. And a lot of businesses started like posting signs saying like you need to be wearing a mask. If you're not wearing a mask, we're not going to let you inside. So it's one of those things that I'm not sure just walking around outside that you're required to,
Mm-hmm.
but people will always wear a mask anyways, just out
Yeah.
of yeah, just because. But for other people, I've heard a lot of different things in Beijing. Like I have some friends who are university students, and for them, their university like strictly shut down.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't allowed to like leave campus. They were on really strict lockdown rules. So I think it depends where in Beijing you lived, or if you were in an apartment building or a hutong. Um, and so it's different for person to person. But that was my personal experience.
And do people actually, because I know there have been a lot of studies lately about like, okay, masks don't keep you from getting sick, they just keep you from
Mm-hmm.
spreading it. So it makes sense in China
Mm-hmm.
where they'd be like, oh, well, if everyone wears a mask, no,
Yeah.
people can't spread it. But do people actually
Yeah.
believe that they're keeping you like safe, or do
Yeah.
they? Yeah, what's the belief behind the masks in China, at least right
Yeah, it's so interesting because all my friends in America now that things are happening there too, they keep
now?
asking me like, why are you wearing a mask? They see it all the time because there's the studies saying like, oh, is
Mm-hmm.
it actually helping? Like, should you wear a mask or not? And I think part of it is like it is more to just, I'm not sure that the whole science if it actually is keeping you from getting sick
Mm-hmm.
or if it's more so to stop the spreading if you possibly have some symptoms because it does help with like if you're coughing and sneezing it's
Mm-hmm.
just like a extra safety barrier to keep just germs and bacteria and all of that. So I think it's more also like it's Chinese culture. I think anyways a lot of them are used to wearing masks because of pollution, and so it's not seen as such a crazy thing when you walk around and see other people wearing masks. It's not because you're like, oh, they all have the virus. It's just we're all doing our best to have that extra like barrier, the extra layer of protection to stop the spreading just in case you might have the symptoms or anything like that. That's kind of my thought behind the thing. So I just wear a mask anyways, as well as because you need to wear a mask to go into a lot of restaurants and stores. Have you heard much about that? Like, have you heard about the science behind the masks?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of research on it because I kept seeing things popping up that's like, oh,
Yeah.
don't buy all the masks from the medical professionals and sick people who actually need them,
Right.
because even
Right.
the N95, like really good pollution masks that you can get from like Home Depot and stuff,
Yes.
they don't
Right.
they don't fully prevent you from getting sick because the virus particles are
Yes.
so small. But like if you're sick
Right.
and you're coughing and stuff,
Yes.
then it prevents you, or breathing out like particles, it prevents you
Yeah.
from breathing them onto all of the surfaces and stuff, or touching your face and touching things. But I can
Yes.
see where they're coming from, because just being here, like I'm in Tbilisi, Georgia right now, is kind of like doing a digital nomad thing, and now I'm here for for a while. In fact, so I was, yeah, just going to the grocery store. I feel like I should be wearing one, even though I don't want to take them from the medical professionals who need them. But it's like
Yeah,
a comfort thing. I guess
it
I've been
is.
in Asia for so long, but I feel like I should be wearing one. You know what I mean? Like it just
Right.
makes you feel safer.
It does. It does. It adds that extra layer, and you feel a little bit safer going out and wearing one. And it's like everybody else around you's wearing one too, so it doesn't. It feels like oh maybe it's helping just a little bit, but it makes you feel even safer just being around
Yeah.
other people. Yeah, and
Well,
like in China, like in Beijing, the whole time the metros have been running, the buses have been running. So and like I've been going out to grocery stores and shops, like doing my best to avoid crowded places, but I'm still still going out and doing things. So having a mask and just having that extra layer helps you feel a little bit more safe, you know?
so there was no rule that's like, oh, you can only go to the grocery store once a week, or one person can go and then the next person can go a few days later. Because I've been hearing like from people in other cities that they have special
Mm-hmm.
restrictions like that.
Yeah. So for me, no, like I've been able to come and go whenever I wanted. I was allowed to leave at any point. But I also heard from many friends, especially my friends in Chongqing, my friends like down in Guangdong province, they had very strict rules about like they got a card and they could only leave once every 2 days. And it was only one person from their
Mm-hmm.
apartment building that could, or their apartment that could leave every 2 days. So I think it really depended where you're at. And like I said, some universities had strict rules like that here.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been interesting to see every place kind of have different rules regarding that or not. I was very happy that I didn't. It was nice to have kind of freedom to come and go.
Yeah.
But I do feel like I really feel for like I had so many friends who were on lockdown for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
really strict rules, and they had a lot of people who had to help them get groceries delivered, and maybe it was their school or their apartment building, like they couldn't even go outside the gate to get deliveries. They would bring them
Mm-hmm.
inside, and it was a interesting situation. So I have heard it kind of depended on where in the city you lived and which city you were in at the time.
It's also interesting too to think, because most people in China live in apartments, and even when I lived
Yeah.
in the hutongs, like when I lived in,
Oh
those of
yeah,
you
you lived in a
familiar,
Hutong,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
I lived in
yeah.
Beijing's hutongs, but I lived in an apartment building inside a hutong. Like I was in the
Oh,
Andingmen,
okay.
like Guo area, but there was
Oh,
like
okay.
an apartment building kind of inside the hutongs, just randomly.
Wow.
So I feel like they would have confined me to that apartment building. But yeah, like it's interesting that you had you had to check in with people in the neighborhood, because yeah, not many people in China live in a
Yeah.
house.
Right, right. It is
Mm-hmm.
so interesting because most people are in apartment buildings. So it's been
Mm-hmm.
interesting to see how those rules come into effect. And like, I think more people in apartment buildings have very strict rules. Like, even now, we can't have visitors come into the neighborhood, or visitors can't go into your apartment buildings. And I've heard that that's the same for everybody now in Beijing. They're very, very strict about that, letting strangers in. You know, like they want to make sure it's residents only, people who have registered only. Yeah, it's been interesting. And like, it seems like the different families in the neighborhood take turns guarding the gates. Like they've set up gates outside the hutong entrances, because there's so many entrances to come inside and out of the hutongs. You know, they're like a maze. There's not just one entrance.
Mm-hmm.
So now they have people blocking every hutong entrance. And you know, luckily the card works for most of those entrances, but it seems like they have different family members rotate, taking your temperature and checking your card. So it's like the whole community is kind of involved in rotating and watching and checking everything. It's very interesting.
See, I'm like, can they keep those gates except for cars in the hutongs? Like, once this all blows over, can they make it so that people can't drive their cars through the hutongs, please? Only if you live inside.
That would be amazing, because it makes it so hard to walk in the hutongs when a big car drives through.
I know. I'm like, can they just like institute some sort of system where you can only drive in the hutong if you live in there?
That would be amazing.
You could tell we both lived in there. Yeah. But yeah, so how was getting food? Like, were you mostly cooking? Were you like ordering in, a mix of both? Like, what kind of, did you find that the grocery stores were fully stocked? How was all of that?
Yeah. Okay. So when things first started getting a little bit crazy and the numbers started going up, and I was just not sure what was going to happen, I was like, okay, I'm going to stock up for like a little bit, just kind of make sure I'm safe. And then I kind of realized, you know, I did stock up. I got some, you know, fruits and veggies and non-perishables that would last me for a bit. But after a while, I realized going to the grocery store every day, like things were still in full stock. Things weren't running out. Everything was still open because the government like was telling people like you can't close the grocery stores. So, and people weren't panic buying anything. So it felt like very safe to like that comfort of like, I'm not going to run out of food, like even if I need to go to the grocery store every day or every other day. So I didn't stock up that much. I think I did it the first week, and then I was like, oh, okay, it's okay. Also, since a lot of restaurants and businesses shut down, I usually don't cook that much. Like, it's so easy in China. Like, I really don't.
I feel I get it.
It's so easy to go out and order food, or, you know, go to a restaurant, and it's so cheap. So usually I go out a lot, or I order food in a lot. But the first week I tried cooking a lot. I was like, you know, I'm going to get used to it. I'm going to just make myself do this just in case I need to get more in the habit of trying it. But then I realized I was also just trying to be safe too. I was like, I want to keep a distance from delivery drivers or from restaurants and try to avoid that, and limit my interaction with other people just to kind of like social distance a little bit.
Yeah.
And self-isolate a little bit more. But then as time went on, and like I spent the first 2 weeks kind of mostly to myself, you know, working from home, trying to cook a bit, and also just, you know, fruits and veggies and non-perishable things. But after the first 2 weeks, when I kind of spent time by myself, I started going out a lot more, or started ordering delivery. And I know a lot of people at first were like, oh, should you still go to restaurants? Should you still order delivery? Like, is that okay? Is it safe? But after the first 2 weeks, you know, a lot of restaurants and businesses, they started doing lots of their own checks, and like delivery drivers would have their temperature taken, and they would attach the temperature to your food items to make sure like, oh, the delivery driver is safe. So you get your delivery, and it'd be like, oh, here's the delivery driver, and this is the restaurant, and they've taken their temperature. And so they started doing a lot more rules to make sure that you felt safe getting delivery. And there was lots of like funny videos going around at the time too, of like seeing the like no hand delivery, where like somebody would drop off the McDonald's and like step 10 feet away, and then the person would pick it up. And there's a lot of interesting, funny videos showing just like people are really trying to be careful with delivery food and like the restaurants and things. But also word started getting out that a lot of restaurants and local businesses in China are really suffering because of everything happening. And I just kind of feel like, you know, I want to help. I mean, I'm one person, but it's nice to like have that support, and they're struggling to kind of keep surviving during this time. So I haven't been cooking as much anymore, especially now that we're almost 2 months into things. So I still go out a little bit more now and do delivery.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, because just a few more people like you ordering from them is the difference between them going. Totally. You're doing your part by ordering in, helping the local economy.
Exactly. I don't know if I'm really helping the environment, but I'm trying to help, you know, local people. Yeah,
And
I
what
agree.
made you, because I know I watched a video that you did with two of your friends in a park a while back, but
Mm.
that was a while ago. I think like over a
Oh my
month
gosh,
ago or something.
yeah, maybe, yeah, very beginning of February, maybe. It was a while ago.
And at
Yeah,
that point, a lot of people were still deciding to stay in China because they're like, this is going to blow over. Like, it's better for
yeah,
me to just stay here.
yes.
I could infect somebody else on the plane. I could get infected on the plane, bring it to another country.
Yes,
So I'm just
yes.
going to stay here. But then when things started to like really not go away for a while, were people urging you to go home? Like, how did that? I'm assuming family members were like, come back to the US or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that decision process for you work? Whether you wanted to stay in China or go back home, and what were people saying to you?
Yeah, so I had so many messages at the time from family members, or mostly just like people on Instagram or people who follow me. Like they're just so curious because I guess I wasn't, my family I was talking to every day, keeping them updated. So they were surprisingly pretty chill. They knew I was doing everything I could to be safe, and so they were like, you know what, stay, you're okay. Like, and they trust my judgment that if things were starting to get really bad, I would have gone home. But it was mostly other people who were like, what's going on? Like, why are you still there? Are you going to come home? Like, are you working? Like, what's going on? A lot of people just didn't really have eyes here, so they just hear the media, they hear news reports, and they weren't really sure what was actually going on. So for myself, it was like my company started back pretty much right after Spring Festival. I know a lot of people had delays with their jobs, and that was a big part of them deciding to go home or not, or they started teaching online or not. But for me, I started my job pretty much right away at the beginning of February, and I was thinking, I'm just going to stay here and see what happens. I'm working now. I'm just going to keep an eye on things and just do what I can. And I never felt, I guess, because of how China instituted some of those rules and regulations, I always felt like I was pretty safe and that I was doing my job or the best that I could to stay away and stay healthy. And I always I never felt like it was a big panic, like I was cautious, of course, but I felt comfortable staying here and just, doing my job, doing my work. This is my home right now. I've lived here in China for 5 years, so I didn't feel a need at the moment to like rush back home for anything. And yeah, luckily it was fine. I didn't feel like that. I did have some friends who like were going through a lot of like, yeah, should I go, should I stay, with their jobs. They weren't sure. There was a lot of um, concern there, and they just weren't sure what to do. So I did have some friends who ended up going home, and a lot of people at the time, we didn't realize what was going to happen, if it was going to spread more. And now I've had a lot of friends who had difficulty coming back to China. So in that sense, I've been happy that I stayed here and that I was in Beijing. I've been in my home the entire time, and so for me, it was never really a question if I was going to go home or not.
Yeah, I feel like the US and Australia and stuff should almost take notes on China's lack of grocery store panic buying and stuff. You were saying that before, and I was just thinking, I'm like, like, same here in Georgia, the country, in Tbilisi,
Yeah.
all the grocery stores are still like fully stocked as well. And we have toilet paper as well, too. And
Oh
I'm like,
wow.
maybe some of
That's a
these
hot
other countries should
commodity.
take some notes. I'm like, we are fully stocked still. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that kind of blew my mind when people back home started telling me that. I was like, really? Like even in China, there was never that problem. Like all my Chinese friends have been joking to me about that now. They're like, ha ha ha, does your family have toilet paper? Like it's just a funny thing because like that was never a big uh concern here. Like
I'd
people
be
weren't
more worried
panicking
about
about that.
food. Like, I mean,
Yes,
I have a
I
bum gun
totally
here, so
were.
I can always score, use that.
Oh, so you're fine. You're
I'm fine. I don't even need toilet paper.
fine.
So I was wondering, I do want to quickly, I want to talk about your friends who've come back to China and the quarantine stuff. But first, for those people who don't know you, what can you just explain your job really fast? Because I know,
Sure.
because you don't teach English in China, so
Oh, I
that's
don't teach
part of it. You
English.
don't have a classroom that you need to go to. So do you want to just quickly
Right.
explain what you do, and then we can talk about the quarantine stuff?
Yeah, yeah. So like yeah, when I first came to China, I was a teacher for 3 years, but I moved to Beijing and now I do like marketing and media for an education recruitment company here. And my company that I work for is called Career China. And so we recruit teachers to come to China to work. And we work with a variety of different schools, like First Leap, Abbey, Owen English. So there's a variety of different schools that we work with, and we basically match candidates with a school to come work with. And so it's been interesting during this time, working for a recruitment company or just schools in general and teachers in general. My job hasn't been affected as much because I wasn't teaching classes. I didn't have like a classroom to go to or online students that I needed to meet and, work out an online teaching platform and all of that stuff. So in that sense, like my job is kind of remote anyways. I've always worked online or worked in the office. So I've always been able to continue doing my job during this time, which I feel very fortunate, very grateful that it wasn't as affected as I know like a lot of other teachers, and the schedules have been changed. So that's what I do in Beijing now. And it's been an interesting time because most of our schools and teachers that I work with, we have transitioned to online teaching as well, as most teachers are right now because you can't go to classrooms. And that's been a bit of a change because more of our focus before wasn't on online teaching. But now it seems like with everything happening in China and even around the world now with schools in the US changing to online teaching, that's going to be a big thing coming up.
Yeah.
But at the moment it's we're very hopeful. I mean, it's hard to say right now how things are going to go. Like a lot of schools in the beginning were saying maybe we'll open in March, maybe we'll open in April. And it kind of depends on the school. There's a lot of delays still, so people are a little bit uncertain when schools are going to start back up again. But online classes are still going, and we're staying like in touch with all of the schools that we talk with now and just trying to encourage people to stay in the loop with things. And yeah, it's been an interesting time.
Yeah, I feel like things are fine for you in your job, but for everybody else
Yes.
that you work with,
Yes.
things have been
it's been a bit
not
crazy.
as easy. Yeah.
Right. It's been interesting.
So do you want to talk a little bit about, because I know so many things to talk about, but I guess since we're already on this tangent, we can talk about for people who, because I know we've got people who wanted to arrive like in February, like they were supposed to have already arrived. And I'm sure that you have, and we'll talk about September as well, but I'm sure you have plenty of teachers, working with you that, they wanted to have already arrived or they were supposed to be arriving now. So are you transitioning them to online teaching with the same school, or how is that working? Like what have you guys been doing? Or have you asked them to push back 6 months, or what are you guys doing right now with all of that?
What's the deal?
What's the deal? What's happening?
We've had so many questions, and like people have even messaged me on my Instagram, not with our schools, like, hey, like I was gonna come to China like in a few months. What should I do? Like what's going on? And because we work with so many different schools, it kind of depends on the school. And it also depends on their visa process. The visa process takes several months anyways. So right now what's been happening is a lot of it has just been pushed back. Because we don't have exact dates for when they're going to be able to come. And especially with China now, they're doing a quarantine rule. So anybody coming from overseas has to do 2 weeks quarantine, like in a government hotel or a specific place. So that has also changed things a little bit, because some people before were saying, oh, maybe I'll just still come. But the schools were kind of really wanting to protect future teachers, saying like, let's push back, let's wait a little bit. So right now like I said, I'm not super involved with the whole visa process or the recruiting. I do a lot more with the marketing side. But a lot of the teachers have been told, like, we're hoping by summertime to start getting people to arrive. But if they're not already in China, they haven't been doing any online teaching or anything. I think the schools have told them, we would like you just to wait until you're a part of the company. So a lot of the teachers we're kind of working to see like if we can figure out some other like online teaching platforms. I'm not really sure. It's mostly just been like pushed back time for coming to China and just waiting to see. We're hoping this summer that more teachers can start arriving. But the big thing is like still encouraging them. We're trying to stay positive. We're trying to stay updated with the students and the teachers, and also just the government officials and the rules that we have to follow. And so we're trying to say like, hey, if you're thinking of applying or you did apply, please stay in the loop. We're going to do our best to keep you updated. A lot of it's out of our control, but we're hoping, by the summer sometime that things will calm down enough to finish the visa process and all of that. It's a
So you're thinking like for the newer teachers, because I've been talking to some people who they were supposed to start in February, and then their school's like, oh, we're probably going to open back up in April, so you should just like come soon, and they haven't. So I'm like, but you're thinking maybe the summer or for September, those newer people will probably start then.
That's what we're thinking, a little bit later. Like I said, I'm not for sure either, but we did have some schools or like people I don't even know, like other people were telling me like I'm working for a different school and they've urged me to come arrive anyways, but I'm not sure about this and I'm not sure about this. And I think a lot of it was like a lot of schools a lot of teachers left, or some weird things happened with some people, and some other, like some of my friends, like they left, and then their school was telling them, if you don't come back by this certain date, we can't always promise you're gonna have a job. I don't know. There's all this crazy stuff going on. So a lot of schools are like, we need teachers now, but I think they had hopes then that schools would reopen by April, but I think at this point it hasn't happened, and I don't think it will happen. So we're kind of hoping by summertime things will start to be more regular. Hopefully, I mean, maybe it could be sooner. I'm not exactly sure, but yeah, it's kind of confusing.
Does it look like, because the school year is going to end in a few months, like usually, right, it ends around June, end of June, beginning of June.
Yeah.
And so I've been talking to some people who are thinking, well, what's the point, and just restarting the school year when the school year is about to end so soon. So have people have been talking about that, because I've been hearing April a lot as well.
Right.
What's the word on the street?
The word on the street. See, it's so interesting. I work with a lot of teachers who work for training schools who work year round, but I have friends who work for public schools who, we're going to end in June, or they work for kindergartners, things like that. And so a lot of them heard that they're going to have a very, very short summer holiday this year. I'm not sure if that's true or how that's going to work out. Some of my friends were telling me they might have Saturday classes for a long time to make things up. And then other ones were telling me whenever they can resume school, they're going to try to go through the summer and make up classes. I'm not really sure at this point. Like, I keep hearing different stories depending on the school and depending on when their school thinks they're going to restart. So I think there's so many different things I keep hearing as well.
It's annoying too, because I'm sure you're the same as me, and you've got so many people reaching out to you, and you want to help and you want to provide answers, and you're just like, I wish I could tell the future, and I wish I knew what was going to happen.
Oh my gosh, that's the most difficult thing. And then you have people coming at you from like different cities in China and different schools in China. And you want to help them all, and you want to have answers, and you're like, I don't even know the answers yet. So it's kind of a wait and see game. But you want to give them some hope or some positivity, but it's hard to know right now really what's going to happen.
Yeah. So what are some tips, like, because I know you're mostly in the marketing, like social media kind of sphere, but I know that you have been transitioning, or at least your company has been helping transition people to working online that were teaching. And I've been talking to some people who are having some, like, not some difficulty, but they're just not used to teaching online. And a lot of schools don't have good resources. Like I have friends who do teach online through, programs like the IP Kit and plenty of other schools. And they have these like websites where everything's set up perfectly, and the chat. Yeah, and the lesson plan's already there. But then I have other people who were teaching in China. They don't have any of those resources. One of my Teach Abroad Squad students, Sarah, her school was like, can you record 4-minute videos on WeChat and then send them to us, and we'll send them to the parents? And all she has is her phone, because her laptop's still in China, because she was traveling for Chinese New Year when it happened. And yes, so she's like, so I'm basically making videos for kindergartners on my phone right now, and like, I don't know what to do. And other people like that as well are trying to teach little kids online, but with none of the resources that those big online companies usually provide you. So is there any advice that you have, or anything that you know that might be able to help those people who are trying to teach online, but with none of the programs or resources that typical online teachers have?
Totally. I've had so many, I've had so many teachers that work for our schools, or just friends reach out and they're like, I've never taught online before, and I don't know what to do. I don't have all these resources. And it's just such a different thing, because you're not in the classroom and you're not, with the kids physically. Like, it's a totally different transition. I had some friends who started teaching young students from WeChat. Basically, like, because they knew WeChat couldn't do long videos, they started doing small snippets. And because they were teaching from their apartments, they were telling me about some like funny like games they started playing about, like, scavenger hunts, or like find something that starts with the letter H, or find something that, starts with this, or is the color of this. And that works really well for young students if you're trying to work it from your apartment and trying to They did some really creative things, but I know, like, when you're stuck to a computer, it's a little bit different if you're not moving around your apartment. So I've had some friends who told me that they found some really great online resources. I'm trying to remember some of the websites they told me, because I'm not actually teaching right now either. So they told me some websites. I'm trying to think. But I know that they told me some resources they had to like find and reach out to. And a lot of them were like idea sharing and starting WeChat groups to share ideas with each other, or finding other website resources, because it is a totally different thing. And if you're not used to like VIP Kit or having that built-in platform with all those great activities, it's a little difficult.
Yeah. Well,
Luckily,
if
like
you find the resources, maybe we can
yeah,
link them below
yeah,
our videos
totally.
and stuff so people can find them. No,
People can find them.
yeah.
Yes.
I'm like, oh,
Yes.
we'll find them later. We'll find them afterwards.
We'll find them and link them. Yes, because
Yeah.
I know it's such a struggle and it's totally different. So definitely we'll try to link some of those below. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's been hard too, like, because there's a difference between, even if you're teaching online and you've got the students in front of you and you're doing it live, that's one thing, versus like make a video and send it to the students and you're like,
Right.
what do I even do?
Right. What am I even doing this video? Exactly. It's so different. And even like teachers who told me that they're teaching online with the kids, some of those kids are really little. They're like 4 or 5. And like like they were telling me the grandparents are like peeking their heads in, like, what's going on? And trying to feed them during the lessons. It's just a total, you can't be as engaged. So it's like an extra level of extra distant level that you're trying to overcome. And they were saying, like, you can't just get up and sing and dance with them as much. You can find a way to do that, but it's just a little bit harder.
Yeah.
So I feel the struggle. It is a little bit harder.
Well, yep.
Did not come across very positive, but I think a lot of teachers have told me that after it did take some adjustment, but they've gotten used to it and they figured out a way to reach with the students and to engage them online, and to find creative ways to do that. So yeah, definitely, like, I'll try to get more of those resources to help you guys, and link them below.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things too where I think we all want to be good teachers. Like, chances are, if you're listening to this video, you're not one of those teachers that just like doesn't care about their job. So right. I think, everybody wants to feel like they're doing their job well. And it's frustrating if your job gets turned upside down and now you have to start teaching online and you don't know what you're doing. And just know that, at least from my perspective, as long as you're trying and doing your best, you don't have to be perfect. Like, as long as you're just doing your best,
absolutely,
that's
absolutely.
Good enough. Like, you're trying.
Absolutely. I have heard from like the other side of things, like the admins and the management, like they know how frustrating it is and like what a big adjustment it has been for most of these teachers switching to online teaching and trying to figure out the courses and the classes. And so everybody realizes, like, it's not going to be easy, but they know you're trying. And the good thing is, a lot of teachers have told me, like, you're not alone. You're not the only one going through the struggles of figuring out online teaching. There's so many other teachers doing that all over China right now. And so many teachers, who are back in America waiting to come back to China, they're trying to do it from there too. So you're not alone. And I know, like, so many people have been coming together to share those resources and to figure it out together. So if you are worried about it, like, don't stress too much. As long as you're trying the best that you can, it's just a process. It's just an adjustment a little bit.
And it's been hard too, because a lot of times the administration of your school doesn't know exactly what you should be doing either. And they're getting, like, the top person's like, have them teach online, but gives them zero instructions. And then they tell you, and you're like, well, what do you need me to do? And they're like, I don't know, because they're trying to figure it out too.
I don't know exactly what you want from this. And exactly, if you don't have like a curriculum or like a platform online to do it from, it's like trying to make things up out of nothing. So yeah, that's difficult. That is, yeah.
So for the people who, because you were saying you have a lot of friends who've either come back to China and are quarantining now, or they're thinking about coming back. And I've been reading a lot of stories. Like, I have a friend who just went back to Beijing, and she wrote a whole thing about it that I read on Facebook Live. And then I have some friends who've been like quarantining in Nanjing, and they just went back. But then I'm also hearing from people who hear from like WeChat groups about all these horror stories. And I'm like, they're in a hotel with bed bugs. And I'm like, what? So at least from your perspective, from everyone that you've talked to, what's the situation? Who's deciding to come back and why, and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I have all friends in all those situations as well. I think for the most part, I have friends who basically decided one of two things, like either because of their job or because of something, they want to come back soon, even though they know there's a new quarantine rule that you're going to have to stay in quarantine for 2 weeks. Or I have friends who decided, like, my job isn't changing in the next month. I'm going to stay at home and not have to do quarantine, and I'll just keep doing what I'm doing from here. So for the ones who have had to come back and do quarantine, I have friends in quarantine right now. And it's interesting to hear, like, most of my friends who came back to Beijing, they were given a choice. Like, there's a few different ranges of hotels they could choose to stay in. And from what I've heard, none of them have complained and said it's horrible. Like, most of them, they get like 3 meals a day. Like, one of my friends has a little robot that brings him his food every day.
I saw that on your stories. I was like, what? Where are we,
Cute.
Japan?
I know. It's like the future has arrived. That was pretty interesting. So like, like they're doing their best to like, and it's a nice hotel. I mean, he does have to pay for it, but like a little robot comes every day. He gets 3 meals. He also can order Waimai anytime he wants. Like, so even if he doesn't want that food, he can order anything else. But I know that's just his specifically. There's all kinds of other situations now with those hotels and the quarantine.
Like he's got a good one. Like my friend who is also in Beijing was quarantining, but out by the Great Wall. And her place looks very nice. Like the hotel is very nice. The food looks really good, but she's not allowed to order delivery, even though I'm like, are there even any places to order from out that far?
Really?
But they feed her 3 meals a day, and you can have a friend bring you like snacks or care packages. Yeah, but it's so far. I'm like, oh gosh, like that's an really expensive taxi ride.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
because my friend, he's by Dongjimen, which is like right in the center of everything. I was like, how did you get such a nice place? Like,
and this was like she lives in the Dongcheng district, so like not out in the middle of nowhere. So they just quarantined. She's like, yes, all the Dongcheng people have to be out here, and I'm like, what?
Really?
It's bizarre, but so maybe they're running out of room and
maybe it depends. Yeah. I've heard lots of people returning. I have some other friends who live in a hutong, and they just returned like from Thailand, and they were allowed to stay in their hutong for the 2-week quarantine, but they got an alarm put outside their door, and it's like anytime they try to leave, it sets the alarm off. And so they have a dog, and they were like, oh my gosh, how are we going to take care of our dog? Like they had to give their dog to somebody else to take care of because they couldn't even take him outside to walk him or anything. So that was kind of interesting. There is kind of a range, but I think mostly from what I've heard, it's been okay. You have to do the 2 weeks, but it's all right. Most people have been wanting to return because they're like, I'll get through the 2 weeks, and then once you get through that, it returns to normal. You can go outside any point. You can go outside and kind of go back to normal.
And I was seeing, it was like, I forget the name, it was special something provision 2 or whatever it was, where you could request to be quarantined in your apartment or your house, but you can't have roommates. So she had roommates, but they weren't in the apartment. Like they had left, they were back home, but they still said because it's a shared flat, you have to go to the hotel. But some of my friends who are like married or like have a family and they just have their own place, they've been allowed to quarantine in their house. But the rules change every day. Like someone who was posting. Right. Yeah, someone was posting my Facebook group about how Beijing now is no longer like allowing you to fly into Beijing, and you have to fly into another city first and then take a test and then you can get back on the plane, but it's really unclear. And I'm like, what is happening?
It's very confusing because like last week it was like, okay, you can go to Beijing, but 2-week quarantine. But now they have redirected to like Ho and like Shijiazhuang and like Tianjin, and so you can't even fly into Beijing anymore. I don't know how that works. They redirect you first and then test you before you can come back to Beijing.
What I got from the article, it seemed like they were testing. You get off the plane in one of those cities, then they test you, and then they said that you can get on your flight back to Beijing. But it was making it seem like they just did a quick test and then you get back on the plane. But I was confused. I was like, are you doing the 2-week quarantine and then you can fly to Beijing? But they said your original flight. So I'm like, well, your original flight would be that same day.
That same day. Yeah, I haven't heard about that either. I was confused as well. I was like, how does that work? So none of my friends have had that happen to them yet. So I'll be interested to see, like, maybe I can hear more about that. Yeah. I know, like, some of my friends have been trying to move apartments during this time, like their lease ended. And so they were trying to move in. They already arranged everything and had a new contract with another apartment. But like communities in the apartment buildings are being very strict and they're not letting them move in. So a lot of them are very confused. They have to appeal to the community director and like, try to say like, hey, like I've been in Beijing this whole time. I haven't left. I've already done quarantine. I'm fine. I'm safe. But it makes it an extra hassle, more of a process right now for them trying to move. Yeah.
And also now I've noticed, like, because in the past and even still probably now a little bit, there's been some racism towards like Chinese looking people, don't even have to be Chinese, around the world. And then now I've been hearing that it's kind of the opposite situation in China where they see somebody who's not Chinese and they're like, oh, you're bringing the virus back in. And then there's also the politics with like them saying that the virus originated in the US. And I've been hearing that as well. Like we don't accept, like restaurants saying we don't accept foreign guests and stuff. So how's everything, at least from what you've seen, how's everything been with that?
It has been interesting how that's kind of flipped because this whole time we've been hearing about those stories going on around the world and it was terrible. And I felt,
don't be racist, guys.
I know,
Stop it.
God,
Yeah.
like that's horrible. But I have heard some stories now in Beijing, and my friends have told me even this week they were saying, I got on the subway, and immediately once I sat down, everybody else in the same cart got up and moved away from me
Oh
because
my gosh.
I guess now that they're hearing like people from overseas are returning, and they're very very worried they're bringing the virus back again, and it's going to start more flare-ups. And so I have heard situations. I haven't personally actually felt it or seen that. I still have been doing what I do. Like,
Mhm.
I go on long walks every day, and I'm out at the grocery store, at cafes and restaurants. And so I haven't felt that, but I have heard like firsthand stories of some of my friends feeling that, and like having people kind of treat them differently. And I have heard some restaurants like refusing some foreigners now.
Mhm.
I'm not saying like everywhere, but I have heard that happen. So it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's kind of interesting how that kind of turned a bit.
Karma almost. But
Yeah,
not for
I
us because
know.
we're not
Almost.
doing anything, but
Exactly.
like
Exactly. No, I
wide
feel
scale karma, I guess.
yeah,
I've been
totally.
seeing too, like it was interesting because I lived in Vietnam for a bit, so I still like part of some Facebook groups, and in the past it was signs on restaurants saying, "I'm sorry, our Chinese friends, can't dine with us today," blah blah blah, and now it's sorry, our Western friends can't dine with us today. Only Chinese, Vietnamese, and
Oh
Korean
my
allowed.
oh my gosh, that's
So
so
like,
weird.
oh my
It's like
god,
flips like that. Yeah, I had a
yeah.
friend who was living in Vietnam, and then he was like, "Yeah, I couldn't go to my gym anymore. They refused me entry, so like he just decided to go home." He was like, I'm gonna go quarantine at home." That's crazy. Wow.
So let's see. I'm trying to think of what else I haven't asked you. So for those people who want to arrive in China in September, because you're saying that you're sort of
Mhm.
trying to push people back to September, let's talk about
Yeah.
those people because I know that there are a lot of
Sure.
people.
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of people coming to me saying, I was planning on going in September. What's happening? Should I still apply? Like, there's this idea that I'm just going to wait till everything blows over to apply. But then there's also that rush of like, well, it takes so long to get a visa. The time to
Yeah.
apply is, I keep telling people, I'm like, if you want to go for September, you got to start applying like now to get your visa on time.
Totally.
But will people even be able to get their visas if things are closed? Like, what's happening with all that? Do you have any insight into people who want to, into the situation for people who want to arrive in September?
Totally. So, like, my recommendation, just based on kind of what's happening with the company I work for and friends I've been talking to, I would still say go ahead and apply because, yeah, the application does take a while to process or to get your documents ready. Even like just getting a TEFL, if you don't have a TEFL already, I would say get started on that if that's something that you need for the job that you're wanting to get. But go ahead with the application. Go ahead with the process. Like our company is still hiring and still wanting to match people. We realize we can't give affirmative dates right now, and that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
difficult. But like you said, the process will take several months anyways. So it's great if you want to, if you're still like excited to do it and you want to do that in the future, please go ahead and just go for it, try it, do the application, get the process started at least. And that's something that will make it easier down the road. Once things do become more clear and open up again, it will make it much faster for you down the road, and you won't have to wait even longer to get things
Mm-hmm.
done. Yeah.
Because it's
So
not
that's
like you're wasting a ton of money, right? Like
yeah.
the most that you would spend money on is a TEFL, and then if you want to teach
Yeah.
abroad anyway, you need a TEFL anyway. And
Totally.
if
You
you're
need a
getting
TEFL
like
anyways.
your yeah, and if you're getting your degree authenticated and stuff like that, that's not
Yeah.
just gonna. What's the timeline on that? I believe it's good for
Oh
quite a
gosh,
while. It's
I
not
don't
like
even
it's
remember.
gonna just
Yeah. Oh
expire.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Like that will last a long time. So even if you're not sure at this point and you're thinking about it, like go ahead and do those things because that's gonna make it so much quicker later on. Yeah, get your things authenticated, get your TEFL, start the application process, or start like looking around for schools and cities, do a little bit of research about, things in China because, I have hope. I think things are going to get better here. They are going to return to normal. Like every day I see more and more people going out, and we still have those rules and restrictions to keep people safe, to keep the numbers down. But I think things in China are looking better. I don't know when things in schools will start bringing people over again, but I would just say, yeah, go for it. If that's what you're looking to do, get the process started now.
And I've been looking at your stories. It looks like there's way more people out on the streets. Like people are actually wandering
Yeah,
around, enjoying the sunshine.
yeah,
So have you noticed when
totally.
did things start to change a little bit for you?
I think it was like right near the like beginning of March. Like a lot of people had already like come back and done their own self quarantine. And I think as the weather started getting warmer and people had like been here for a long time, I think people started coming out more, and it's been really nice. It makes things feel a little bit more normal, and it's kind of exciting. Yeah, I go like on these long walks around China every day. Like still trying to keep a distance from people, but at the same time, like a lot of the parks were closed and the parks that were reopening. And like places you can go to the Summer Palace now, you can go to Jingshan Park, you
Woo!
can go to Beihai. So all these like places that were closed before out of like special cautions, they're reopening again, which is like really a nice positive sign. And even I've heard like some of the like national parks in China and like special locations have been reopening again. So it's kind of a positive sign, and people are going to those parks. You see families out and kids, like people are still wearing masks, of course, being cautious, but there's so many more people out now. At the time, like 2 months ago, the malls were completely dead. Nobody was walking around outside, but now people are going back to the malls. People are going out again. So it is looking like more hopeful. It makes me excited and just happy. It makes it feel more normal. And I still have friends who are here. Like we had a picnic in the park the other day, and people are just trying to do more normal things with their life again, which is it's just kind of comforting to see.
It's crazy. Like right as China starts to get better, the rest of the world
Yes,
starts having their problems. And so many people, like it's all over my, social media now and the news, and I just can't
totally,
escape it. And
totally.
it's exhausting because I've been working. I haven't been in China, but I've been dealing with this for like
Yes,
over 2 months now.
yes,
And I'm like,
yes.
oh,
And
welcome to the
now,
party. This is old
exactly,
news, guys.
exactly. You're like, I've been doing this for 2 months. Oh
And people
man,
are like, oh, my
so
job
crazy.
and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, my job too, for the last 2 months, guys. Because it was one of those things where I would go out to dinner with someone and they'd be like, oh, you work with China? Oh, I'm sorry. That must be horrible
Whoa.
for you. And I'm
Right.
like, yeah, it
Right.
is. It was like a joke. Like people are like, oh, China, ha
Yeah.
ha, that's horrible. And
Yes. Oh my
I'm like,
gosh.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Yep. It is. And now it's finally like things are happening in the US, and like it's been so interesting to see how different things are there, how people are processing it when China just went through all of that. So it's yeah, it is like watching the same thing happen again. So I don't know. I'm hoping like people have been seeing like my stories and they'll comment and be like, yeah, we're just going into strict lockdown here. Like I'm in the US or I'm in Australia or I'm in Europe, and
Mhm.
a lot of them are saying like it's nice to see that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Like I'm not saying that China's completely through things and that things are totally normal here, but I think things, after 2 months, the numbers have changed a lot. There's
Mhm.
less cases now, and it seems like things are going back to normal. So it's nice to see like there's light at the end of the tunnel. People are like, that's kind of hopeful to see people out
Yeah.
again, and that if you follow these rules, it's hard at the time. It is kind of hard once you go into like self quarantine, or you're trying to socially distance yourself, and like you're doing online teaching. It's a little bit different at first, but if you do that and you're trying your best to just be socially aware, it does get better, at least like what I've seen from China and from Beijing since I've been
Any
here.
tips for people who, especially extroverts and like outdoorsy
Mm.
people who are just
Oh,
going nuts in
oh
their
my
house or
gosh,
their apartment?
yes.
Any tips from somebody who's lived through it?
Yes. Okay, so I started coming up with like little things, like little routines to try to keep myself going, because I'm very extroverted, and I was like, how am I gonna do this? Like I can't just like not talk to people. I can't miss my friends. I started FaceTiming people a lot. Like I started doing different things with my family and my friends. That was an easy way to just keep in contact and do something different. I started like I was worried I was gonna fall into a hole of like I'm just gonna watch a lot of Netflix and I'm just gonna which was great. I still did that, but I also started doing more things like I don't know, like connecting online with my friends. I have a podcast that I do with my friends as well, and so we would do our podcast online, and that was a great way to like talk to each other and stay connected. Um,
What's your
yeah,
podcast about?
it's
I
about
haven't.
dating in China.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. What's
so
the
if
name of your
anybody,
podcast?
it's
I'm writing
it's
it
called
down.
yes. Oh my gosh. Oh, Rochelle, I'd love for you to listen and see what you think. It's called Date Night China, and
Okay.
so my friends and I have been expats who've been living here for a long time, and we just thought it was so interesting to see how people date here, and like there's a lot of things that go on with intercultural dating and just like expat life and the kind of people you meet here. So that's been interesting, and to
Why
make
didn't
it
your
kind of a fun.
podcast exist a couple years ago when I was perpetually single for 5 years in China?
Listen, I totally understand, girl. I've been through like those ups and downs, everything. Yeah, we were like, let's talk about this and like, why are we perpetually single, and why is it so hard to like to date, or why can it be fun to date, or like, what can you take out of it? So it's been kind of interesting, and it's been a fun way to like take our mind off of things too. Like, it's so easy to get caught up into like the quarantine and the rules and the media. That's another tip I would say. Like, take time away from your phone, turn it off for a
Mhm.
bit, do something that's positive to get your mind out of things. So us doing this podcast was a fun way to like take our
Yeah.
mind off of things, not get so bogged down by, because like what you're going to hear in the media is going to be a lot of heavy negative things. It's not always going to be
You
positive
can't
news.
escape it. Like you can't even
It's
go on
so hard.
Facebook or anything to
Yeah,
escape it. And
you
sometimes I have to
can't.
just
Yeah.
shut my computer because it's been like
Yes.
2 months, and now that it's
Yeah.
everywhere, I'm like, I just
Yes.
cannot deal.
Oh my gosh,
Closing the
it's so
computer,
difficult.
putting my phone
Yes.
down, just
Yes.
away.
Yes.
I'm reading a
Taking
fantasy
time.
novel.
Yes, I need to get my mind out of it. That's a great
Yeah.
idea. Do that. Take that space. Like, and I started going on long walks. I know where people are, maybe they can't go on long walks, or like if you can't do that, I have some friends who started doing yoga, started doing some meditation, just something to keep your mind and your body also like active and fit, doing something different besides dwelling on all the negativity going on.
I've been doing the yoga with Adrian in the morning, and that's been really helpful
Oh,
because I feel like I don't usually have like an anxiety problem, but with everything that's
yeah.
been going on the last few months,
Oh
I've
my
been
gosh,
taking
yeah.
the stress from other
Yeah.
people.
Yes.
Like, I mean, yeah, because obviously things aren't going like amazingly for me since I help people teach in China. And then like I see what's happening with them, and I'm like, I don't know how to say it. I absorb that negativity, and
Oh
I feel
yeah.
personally
Yes.
responsible for their
Yes.
situation, even though that's stupid.
Yes.
But you know, I mean, it's hard not to be like, oh my god, like there's got to be something I can do. And
Totally.
then you're surrounded by the negativity on social media, and just taking like 30 minutes in the morning to just breathe deep and go through a couple poses, like not even a hard video, but just because you have to, I can't really meditate. I can't get my brain to shut off. But like
Yeah, I'm the
if
same. Yeah.
if I'm like, okay, I have to hold this pose and breathe at a certain time and balance, there's no
Yeah.
room in my brain to think about
Yes.
anything else.
It's giving you enough tasks in your mind to like focus on something else for a change.
Yeah.
I totally feel you. That's great though. I feel like that's such a great idea to do that. And if
And it's on
I think
YouTube, it's
do
free.
that.
So
Yeah. Oh, that's great. There's so many great like I have some friends who started doing like YouTube videos or like workout videos. Like there's so many
mhm.
things online that you can find that will help during this time, whether it's yoga or like some kind of like workout cardio thing inside your house that you could do.
Well, I had one more question that I wrote down that I forgot
Yeah.
to ask you. I've been hearing, I don't know how much you would know about this situation, but I've been hearing different stories about the amount of money that people are getting paid during this time, like people
Mm.
who like were working and now they're either not working or they're teaching online, but it's only a couple hours a week. And some people have been getting their full salaries, some people haven't been getting like anything. And so, do you know
Yeah.
anything about that or what the rules are? Because I've been seeing a lot of conflicting information about what people
Yeah.
can get paid.
Yeah, I've been hearing conflicting rules too because I have heard discrepancies between people, and I thought it was like one solid rule, like for a while in the groups it was floating around like this is the law about like
Hmm.
employer is supposed to be paying you this amount or like this percentage. But it seems like a lot of companies, I'm not sure how it's been going, but I know depending on their school, some people have been getting I don't know, like half salary, or it's like depending on the number of hours that they teach now during the day, which isn't exactly fair because like I've heard some kindergarten teachers, they don't teach as many hours, but they're there all day. So I think it's
Hmm.
really depending on the school. But I think there's like supposed to be an official law about that. So some people have been having some problems with their school. I need to look into that as
Yeah.
well.
Somebody
Yeah.
posted something in my Facebook group about that. Like the law says that you need to
Yeah.
be paid this percentage of your salary, and
Yeah.
this is the minimum amount that they can pay you. And then other people were
Right.
saying, well, my school's not doing that. And usually I like to kind of generally know the law, so I could tell
Right.
people like, okay, no, they have to do
What's supposed
this.
to do. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's hard because I don't know if that's like a trustworthy, news source or like what the actual law
Yeah,
is.
right. I feel the same exact way. Like I've had people ask me questions and I've looked at a couple things and I'm like, it seems like this is the official law, but I can't be sure either. Like it's hard to know when you're not sure if this is the correct source or if it's been translated right. So I'm not exactly 100% sure either. That's
And even
something I
with
would
the
definitely have
housing
to look into.
stipends, like with it,
Yeah,
if you're
yeah,
at home
yeah,
in the
yeah,
US and they're not giving you your housing stipend, you still have to pay your rent in China. So how is
yeah.
that, you
Yeah,
know,
how can you do that? Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. I've had people ask me that and I've tried to redirect them to those sources that I found, but it's one of those things like I'm not 100% sure either and I don't want to say like this is the right thing if it yeah, if it's not the right thing.
So are most of the
Yeah.
schools that you guys are working with, are they paying people the full salary or partial salary, or do you not know, or it's different depending on the
Mm.
school? Do you know kind of what they've
Yeah,
been paying
I'm
people?
actually not sure. Like, because most of the teachers that I know, as far as I know, for one specific school, I know
Mhm.
that they have been, getting their full salary because they've been doing all the same online classes that they would have done if they had been going into the classroom. But I'm not sure for all the schools that we work with, and I'm not sure for all those teachers. So I couldn't say exactly if they're all following the same thing, or if they're all getting paid the same or full or whatever. But I know some of them are because they're working the same hours that they were before. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's fair, especially if you're
Yeah.
working the same amount of hours. I feel like you should
Yeah.
get paid the same.
Yeah. You're like getting the same. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think it's more specific case by case, school by school. So I'm not sure. I don't know all of that specifically about the schools that we work with. Yeah.
Well, if there are any China legal experts that are listening to this video, get in
Yes.
touch with us.
Please. Please step in because I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. And even it's not just a China thing as well. Like all around the world, people are having issues
Yeah.
getting paid, going to work,
Yeah. I think
and
it's
stuff like
happening
that. So,
everywhere now. Right.
yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a big thing.
Well, I don't want to end on that negative note. So, are there any things like, are there any things you said that lots of people have been coming to you asking questions? So, is there anything that I didn't
um,
ask you that you wanted to talk about?
I'm trying to think. Most of the things we did, it was mostly about like, it was mostly just people like, should I still apply? Should I still come?
Hmm.
What should I do? I guess to prepare right now.
Oh,
Um,
I do have one more question. What is
yeah.
the latest that if somebody wants to start in September, or at the end of August, and they're sort of holding off, what's the latest that they can apply and still hopefully get their visa and stuff done on time?
Mm,
Because usually I would tell people to start like now or earlier in the month.
right. Right. We usually want like it depends person to person. Depending on how things go, we usually recommend at least 3 months, like just to
Hmm.
not feel pressure because a lot of people like put it off too late, and even 3 months is sometimes very tight, especially if they have like a job that they're trying to like leave back in the States, or if they have other things they're trying to take care of. Like, don't don't exactly plan on that window. Things can happen anytime, so I would recommend at least 3 months, more like
So
four.
what, by the end of May at least, like worst, like
I would say
last minute? Okay.
yes, I would say at least by May, just to give yourself time so you're not rushed or crammed. Or if something does get delayed, that happens sometimes, and that's out of our control. Like the visa process will get delayed or extended longer, and so I would recommend giving yourself enough time at the least the end of May, but
Hmm.
if not more. Yeah.
I'm thinking things could take a little while too if certain offices are closed, getting your documents authenticated and getting
Yes.
your visa
Yes.
documents this year. I could see it taking quite a while if you can't get your documents done in
Yeah,
a normal time
totally.
frame.
I think things will, yeah, I'm worried about that too because I think I know a lot of friends right now who needed to get visas extended. And luckily, like the government has said, like, if you are a foreigner and you need to extend your visa, we're giving you like a free extra 30 days or extra
Hmm.
certain time. And I'm worried like maybe that'll pile up with everything too. I don't know how all that works, but I think down the line, eventually, yeah, I would give yourself extra time just in case you don't know what's going to happen with these
Hmm.
offices and with all these other things going on. So make sure you just prepare with plenty of time.
So for people who need to do that, did they go in to get their visa extended, or it was just an automatic
It's just
extension?
an automatic thing, actually. Like
Oh.
I had a friend who was he was trying to figure it out. He was like unsure, and so they just told him like, yeah, you don't have to worry about it. It's automatically extended. I'm not sure if that's for everybody or if how
Mhm.
that works depending on who you are, what city you're in. But they told him they were like, okay, it's automatically extended. You don't have to worry about it.
That's
Which
nice
makes it
because
really nice. So it makes it he doesn't have to go in or anything
I
and
know.
wait in the lines and figure all that out. They probably don't want the extra paperwork and things right
Yeah,
now.
because I know you can do that if you go in for anybody, in
Yeah.
any situation. Because I was teaching, in China, and then I wanted to travel for a bit after my contract ended, but they needed to cancel my residence permit because I wasn't working there anymore. And I'm like, can't you
Right.
just like not? And then I'll just leave in a month, but whatever.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Like, can you just not call them? But they extended my visa by 30 days. I just had to go into the Foreign Express Bureau. It's called a
Ah.
humanitarian visa,
Oh.
and you don't have to
Oh.
leave the
Oh.
country. You just like drop your
Oh.
passport off and then you can get it back. And when you get it back, you get an extra 30 days or something. So I got to still
Oh,
travel.
that's nice.
I'm
Yeah,
like, ooh,
that's really
humanitarian
convenient.
visa.
Okay, humanitarian. I didn't know there was that many. Wow. That's exciting. Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about, or anything you wanted to ask me about, or any before we wrap
Um,
it up?
No, I was trying to think if there's any more questions. I think that was about it. Like, that was, yeah, that was it. Is there anything else you wanted to say
Well, we have
before
been
we end
talking for like
this?
an hour, so I think we've covered everything.
Okay, perfect.
So where can people find you if they want to find you after this video to listen to your podcast or read your blog or watch your stories, all of that? And I can link to
Sure.
all of this as well.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, so you can find me at Rachel Meets China. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, the works, and YouTube. And you can also look at my podcast, Date Night China, if you search on any podcast player. So yeah, I'm sharing lots of stories. Instagram is my main one, so I'm sharing lots of stories every day. If you want to see what Beijing looks like right now, if what you see, want to see what people are up to or whatever. So follow me, Rachel Meets China.
I've been watching all of them, but I've been watching them on Facebook.
Thanks, girl. Thanks, girl. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll also link to my blog, Adventures Around Asia, my free Facebook group, China Teach Abroad community, my course, Teach Abroad Squad, all of that as well if you need any help or want any of my resources. And I've been doing like a fun thing because I'm also an extrovert. I've been doing daily Facebook Lives where
I watched one of them the other day.
I've been doing a couple. I decided I was doing a few China ones, and then I talked about what things are like in Tbilisi, Georgia. Last night I gave some tips for working online for the first, like if you have to work from home for the first time, my tips, because I've been doing it for a couple years, like get a laptop stand.
You're like a pro, yeah. Yes.
Save your back. But yeah, so hopefully with the two of us, we can help you through this time, whatever. Like I know that many people are struggling with different things, whether it's like, do I apply, or I was supposed to have already arrived, or like I don't know if I want to do the quarantine or not. Do you recommend that people do the quarantine right now, or are you recommending?
I think it depends on your situation and your job. Like right now you do have to pay for it yourself, so if financial money, if that's a big concern, I would recommend not doing it then, because it can be, a lot of people haven't had the choice of where to stay, and it was like anywhere from like 200 to 600 RMB every day. So if you're not sure, or you're not financially prepared, or your school's not reimbursing you for that, I would recommend waiting a bit to see what will happen. But if you're okay with that and you're ready to come back and you're ready to just be in China, I had a lot of friends who were just like, I'm ready to be back in China and start my job and be normal again. They came, and it's been okay. Like they're getting through it, and they're very happy that they came back anyways. So I think it depends. You might need to assess that for yourself to decide. But I've had some friends who did it, and they're happy that they came back because they were ready to come back.
Yeah. And my friend who is in Beijing, she said it was $1,000 for the 2 weeks, but her school did pay for it. And if you divide it out, because it's a hotel for 2 weeks plus 3 meals a day and a little snack. It's not horrible if you divide that by 12.
The cost works out. It's not terrible, right?
But if you could do it in your apartment and it's cheaper, that would be ideal.
That would be ideal. That would be absolutely ideal.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for answering all of the questions. I'm so glad I got to talk to you about all of this.
I know. Thanks for talking with me. Yeah, if you have any other questions, if anybody else wants to know how things are going in China, I'm happy to answer anything and just let you know how things are going for me, at least, and people I know here.
Yeah, and watch her Instagram stories, because she actually shows what it's like in China right now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks.